Welcome to a really cool edition of Nothing Personal. I'm going to answer some mailbag questions, and then after the break, we have a sit down with Hank Azaria. I think you're going to enjoy this as we are heading into spring training and you are freezing cold thinking that the groundhog was wrong, and you're feeling like the crack of the bat and the freshly cut grass is giving you a rebirth of warmth and comfort and the chance of World Series. I bring to you sort of a baseball-related mailbag where I appreciate that you ask me questions at davidsamsonpodcast.com or at David P. Samson on X, Instagram. Just find me questions, and they may show up on a show like this one. Good morning, David. I'm interested in learning how much a president of a baseball franchise inserts himself into the day-to-day operations of the team on the field. On more than one occasion, you've spoken as if you were a continuous presence in the manager's office and the clubhouse. I always thought presidents had substantial input, but thought it was as the conduit between the GM and the owner. Love the show. Don't always agree. Well, thank you very much for that question. There is no set way to be the president of a team. There are some team presidents that are only in charge of the business operation, and their title is president of business operations. And they work side by side with a president of baseball operations, but they don't report to each other. They each report up to the owner of the team. The way our team worked and the way I worked for the 18 years is that I was the team president, and the general manager or president of baseball operations reported to me, along with the VP or senior VP of marketing or the EVP of finance. But let's just go categories. In baseball, there's baseball. In any sport, it's the operation of the team. You've got finance, which is accounts receivable, accounts payable, cash management, all the things that come as being a CFO. That reports up into me. You've got sales, you have marketing, then you have ballpark operations, you have legal. So there's about 6 people. I'm not a big believer that anyone should have 30 people directly reporting to them. It is very difficult to manage that large number of people. That is why it creates hierarchy. It creates bureaucracy in many regards, but it also is the only way to me to have success is that you have a limited number of direct reports. So I think at my most, I would have 8 or maybe 10 direct reports. And the reason why I was down in the clubhouse and why I was meeting with the manager or meeting with the general manager or meeting with players is a philosophy I have regarding running a business, whether it's a baseball team or whether it's a startup or whether it's a podcast, audio, video podcast. My belief is that in order to properly lead people, you have to understand as best as you can that which they are charged to do. And there's certain things that I'll never know because I never did. I was never a clubhouse manager. I don't know what it is to operate a cashier, to be a cashier, to work in a concession stand. But I spent a hell of a lot of time trying to figure out and spending time in a concession stand, spending time with a clubhouse manager, learning about the job, learning about how the person thinks about the job, because that's the only way I can help the person be better at the job. And the reason I'm trying to help everyone be better is that it makes me look better. If I've got people in my organization who are good at what they do, it reflects positively on me and makes my job easier and potentially more successful. If I don't, then I'm just assuming that what they're doing is good. And it's only after I get a frame of reference can I discover that it was bad. So here's an example. If there's something that I am involved in, let's say it's the making of a movie. I don't know, and I watch the credits to every movie I watch, and I watch a movie every day, but I don't exactly know what a gaffer does or what the prop master does, though I can imagine, or what a unit producer, a line producer. There are 1,000 people that work to make a movie. And if you're being asked to be involved or to invest or to produce or to direct or to star, you can choose to just stay in your lane. Hey, I'm going to act in this. I don't need to know what anybody does. I show up when I show up and I do what I do. And then I leave. If you're not an owner of the property, of the entity, then I guess that's okay. But if you're in charge of operating it, you better know what's happening. And I violate that with nothing personal. And one of the big issues I have with nothing personal versus being president of the Marlins is I don't fully understand what Coca does, but I know I can't do the show without him. I know that me talking into the abyss of a camera every day for 50 minutes, where the audience would like me to do it and us to do it for 100 minutes every single day, there are technical things that he has to do during the show that he'll talk to me about, that he's got all these different windows open, that he's doing lowers and he's doing graphics, and then he's doing getting the show ready for DraftKings Network, all the myriad tasks he has that he doesn't want to bother me with because he considers me talent. But on the other hand, as the owner of Nothing Personal, I want to know everything. But I know that it's not a good use of my time or his for him to sit and explain it to me. So when we're in a studio together, I can watch the control room and I can imagine and learn and speak to the guys in Miami at the Le Batard show, or speak to Coca and try to get an idea. But it's not to my level of knowledge that I'm comfortable with. And one of the things that's in my head is I want to run this company, my current company, the way that I ran my old company. And so I'm not getting in the way of a GM doing his job or a manager doing his job, but I'm certainly asking for and assuming and requiring accountability. And if I only guess what the metrics are, then I'm not sure how I can properly evaluate the performance. With players, it's quite easy. And I'm not the analytic guy. I don't want to have the evaluations done by analytics. As a consequentialist, I want to look at the results and say, oh, this team I put together, there's something wrong here. That as a team, the sum is less than the parts. Or everyone assumed this was a bad team, but there's something about this group that when they play together, when they are together, we are getting above average results, and they're extremely measurable. And what's funny about GMs and owners is they'll try to spin to you, oh, our farm system is the number one ranked farm system, or this is always a good one. We're going in the right direction, or we've seen a lot of positives. Those are all things that people say trying to cover bad results or trying to help you understand how to measure the immeasurable. Sports is the number one. There's a win or a loss. It's what I loved about baseball 162 times a year. I could measure how I'm doing, not by the number of tickets sold, though revenue matters, not by the expenses that I save, because controlling your expenses matters. But my job was to win games. Bud Selig, I mean, it's funny, Coca, and you're right. My number one job was to increase the value of the team. My number two job was to try to operate break even or profitable. My number three job was to try to win games, but I always viewed that winning games would be very helpful to number two, not as necessary to number one. But what I loved about the win and the loss is that you just know at the end of the day. Bud Selig, the commissioner emeritus, former commissioner, the 9th commissioner of Major League Baseball, he would get into an owner's meeting and he would lose his mind at teams that were losing money. He'd be angry. He'd question why it is you want to own a company that loses money. In your regular lives, he would say, you'd be fired. But now you own a team and you think that the regular rules don't apply, or the principles that guided you for your whole life of success go out the window. And he said, and the other point is, why do you want to go to bed miserable at least 2 months a year? And that's if you have the best team in the league, and then still write a check. And what he's referring to is that if you win 102 games, which is a hugely successful baseball season, there are 60 nights of the year that you've gone to bed angry. That's 2 months. And that's if you're the best team. If you lose 100 games, it's like 3.5 months of the year, 30% of a given year that you're despondent beyond repair. And God forbid you lose going into an off day where it bleeds into the off day. It's why I always wanted to win on days before an off day. I always wanted to win the last game of a season because I never wanted there to be. It's why I can't work in football. There's no way I'm going to last a week after a loss waiting for redemption. That's my answer. Hi, David. I hope you're doing well. My friend who is a Mets fan, is this about you, Coca? My friend who is a Mets fan continuously claims that every MLB team should spend $200 million because they already make $300 million in revenue, and that would increase the quality and then value of the franchise. Additionally, claims by teams not spending the bare minimum that they are not then actively trying to win. I would love to hear your thoughts on these claims while breaking down the profitability and plans for success of smaller market teams. Nothing personal has become a significant, consistent part of my life in the past 4 years of listening. Well, thank you. I take that extremely seriously, actually. I appreciate your time. I need you to call your friend immediately and talk about the principles of business because you sound like an agent. You sound like Forbes. You sound like moronic members of the media, alliteration on purpose, who seem to think that teams, because they get revenue sharing and because they get 1/30th of the national broadcast deals, that their payrolls should be higher. The reason why it is moronic to think that is you are ignoring the fixed costs of running an operation that are wholly separate from what your payroll is. Let me give you an example. The minor league operation. Whether you win 100 games or lose 100 games, you are standing up a minor league operation which costs tens of millions of dollars. Let me give you another example. Team travel. Whether you win 100 or lose 100, you're paying team travel. Here's one for you. The general overhead of your operation. People in sales, people in marketing, people in finance. Those are fixed, whether you win 100 or lose 100. Here's one that's a variable cost. The hot dog roller in the concession stand of the upper deck. It's true. If you close the upper deck, then you don't need the guy in the concession stand because the concession stand is closed. Variable costs are things you should have in abundance because when you're on your tuchus, you can get rid of variable costs. What you can't do is get rid of a fixed cost, the rent of the ballpark, the debt service that you pay to the bank because you borrowed money. You got to pay the bank back. They don't care if you win 100 games or lose 100 games. They don't care what your payroll is. What they care is that you pay them back the money you borrowed to buy the team or to operate the team. All of those expenses are before you have paid one player. So the relationship of player payroll to what your revenue is a joke. The relationship is that all of your revenue is split amongst all your expenses, your fixed expenses, your variable expenses, payroll, variable, unless you've got guaranteed contracts of players you can't trade. We used to do an entire exercise of marking players' contracts to market. What is that player worth now? Can we get rid of that player and not have to send money with the deal? Because that doesn't count. If you're paying a player $10 million a year, you can trade him, but you have to send cash. And that player's worth $1 million, and you have to send $9 million. That's a fixed cost of $9 million. The $1 million that the player's worth, that's a variable cost, but only in terms of the difference between the minimum and what you're paying that player. Because you can get rid of that player who's making money, but you have to replace him on the roster, the active roster, with the player making the minimum. So let's say the player minimum is $750,000 and you're paying a player $1 million. And he's worth $1 million. The only variable part of that is $250,000. The $750,000 is fixed. One of the great mistakes that people make is in understanding the economics and finances. The difference between a small revenue team and a large revenue team is revenue. People say small market, large market. Is Milwaukee such a bigger market than Miami? How come Milwaukee was able to have higher payrolls at break even than the Marlins? So it's not market related. It's not size related. It is ticket revenue related. It is broadcast revenue related. Because nationally, we all share 30 ways. The Yankees and the Marlins share the same amount of money that comes through the commissioner's office. But individually, if the Yankees can charge $1,000 for the seat behind the dugout, and the Marlins can charge $250 for the seat behind the dugout because of supply demand, it's a very simple concept, then by definition, the Marlins will be at 25% of the Yankees' revenue, assuming equal sales. Corporate sponsors, go look at all the signage in ballparks. Go look at Lone Depot Park versus Citi Field. Here's a surprise. Lone Depot doesn't pay the Marlins $20 million a year. I promise you that. So while it's the same name of the ballpark, there's a big difference between what the Marlins can afford to have as payroll and what the Mets can afford to have as payroll. And I'm talking about what the Mets payroll would be in a break-even scenario, not the loss scenario that Steve Cohen finds himself in when he keeps running $300 million payrolls out. There is no team. The Dodgers are an example where they have a $378 million payroll, and you say to yourselves, wow, they must be printing money. They're not. The Dodgers have tremendous expenses. Now, are they extra expenses that they could have profited from and pocketed? Yeah, they didn't have to spend $150 million on stadium renovations, but you have to invest in your project, in your company. You can't do the same thing over and over again and expect the same level of commitment. If I showed the same Nothing Personal every day, the same 50 minutes on rerun, and did 50 new shows a year instead of 250, I don't believe my audience would stay the same, to say nothing of grow. The reason our audience grows is there's something new coming at you. And so the Dodgers and other teams and other companies and you in your house, if you wait to do a capital expenditure until it's too late, you have to spend 10 times as much, when if you fixed it as things broke, then it would be way better for the value of your home. These are all things that we think about. How to spend money, where to spend money, what's the best return on the investment? Is it for a player incrementally? Is it to redo the restrooms on the club level? Is it to add a suite or take away a suite? All of these things, what bobblehead should we do? What giveaway, heritage night? We're all trying to figure out, how do you maximize the enjoyment of people so they spend their time and money with you? I want you to spend the next 32 minutes with me, because guess what? After the break, you're going to hear from Hank Azaria, and you may get some voices that you didn't expect. Hank Azaria. It's a Samson sit down, and finally, we got Hank, and we have so much to get to that I just want to bring him on right now. Welcome to the show, Hank. How are you?
I'm good. Hello. Nice to see you, David.
I didn't do the whole intro. I could have gone through 6-time Emmy Award winner, the Screen Actors Guild Award winner, the Tony Award nominee. I could have talked about Simpsons. I could have talked about the fact that I loved you in Along Came Polly, which I love. And you looked really you were like a thirst trap in that entire movie. But I didn't want to do any of that. I wanted to get right to, wait, are you going to tell me something funny about Along Came Polly?
I was going to say, I think you just did it, what you said you weren't going to do, but you did it. Also, I like your jacket.
You want scuba?
You are for scuba? You are for
That's
scuba.
Exactly it. Yeah, when did you realize, was it based on not being popular, or was it based on getting more popular when you sort of discovered your ability to seduce anyone with a heartbeat with a different voice?
First of all, I don't know that I sign on to that premise. That is not, was not able to have not been able to seduce anyone in a heartbeat with my voice. I was always able to mimic things, and popular or unpopular, I just liked mimicking things. So I did.
But you can't say always. Was it first grade? Was it to a teacher? Did you make fun of like a teacher in first grade or try to mimic him or her?
Yes. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't stupid enough to do it to their face too often, but I discovered that even at a young age, I could mimic things, which is odd because your voice is just childlike then. But maybe I couldn't really do it, but I just wanted to. I don't know. I just always loved playing around with my voice and found at a very young age that I could. So I did.
Did it change when you went through puberty and your voice dropped? Did that give you more voices? Or do you remember the difference of having a voice like this and then having a voice like this?
I don't really, with hindsight, I would have really sweated it, meaning like knowing I was going to make my living doing it, I would have really worried about where my voice was headed or not. But no, I've always mimicked things, before, during, and after my voice changing. And I found that I could actually get more voices. Like I got a decent Johnny Carson when I got a little older. And I couldn't do it when I was 10,
Because you
but
didn't
I
have the
could.
octave.
I did not have the richness, if you will. But yes, but I was always trying it out and testing it out, because I enjoyed it.
So the irony of your success is that the way we met is that you are a fan of a team that is not defined by success, that in many ways has been defined by failure. And for the audience who doesn't know, Hank and I first met when I was president of the Marlins, and you were a huge Mets fan, and I spent my life devoted to crushing your dreams. And if you look back to the years with Ugla, the closing of Shea, when we knocked the Mets out of the playoffs the last weekend of 2 seasons in a row, our friendship got off to a rocky start because for whatever reason, you had a correlation between being the president of a team and somehow beating the Mets on the field, which is strange because,
Well,
of course, I couldn't control how bad they were.
as a Met fan, especially back then, especially until Steve Cohen bought the team, you just sprayed your hate everywhere. I currently experience it being a Jet fan. It's just, you just hate everyone and everything. And you just are very upset at your lot in life. So
You
I'm
chose
nothing
Mets
personal.
Jets. It's nothing personal. That's very good. So, how do you feel now? I saw you. I mean, everyone saw you sitting front row during the LCS. That was a funny moment when a look at me, Louie. I texted and say, you're on TV every pitch because you used to sit behind fifth row behind our dugout, the Marlins dugout, and
Yes.
now, of course, you're so successful. You're behind the plate.
Well, I moved around. I was fortunate enough to befriend Steve and Alex Cohen before they bought the team. And through a funny series, through doing charity work, and they held an event at their house and really hit it off with their son. And so, I was lucky enough to be on the end before they ever bought the Mets. So now and because those seats that were first row behind home plate, those are Steve and Alex's seats that from there. So they just kind of, people will shuttle in and out of there from the owner's suite.
Are you flexing that you call him Steven Alex? He's not
Yes,
known as
I
that.
am.
So are
Yes.
you the only one who calls him that?
No, I'm sure many of their friends, call them Steven.
Oh,
I know,
sorry.
I know. Yeah, they don't call each other Mr. and Mrs. Cohen. I know Alex much more than I know Steve, and they've been really gracious and great. And as a Mets fan, mostly I just appreciate their presence. They're pretty great owners.
So are you defining a great owner? This is actually great as a fan. Is there a correlation to spending and being a great owner? Is that simply what it is for you?
No, that's just a part of it. Because like the Wilpons, before they got Madoffed, they spent. Many owners spend. They just don't spend wisely, But Steve is that, and Alex, they really are a team. Obviously, deep pockets and willing to spend, which is great. He's a true Met fan. The way he sees it is it's a public service to Met fans what he's doing, and he's smart enough, right, to hire people who know what they're doing and not meddle, which is how he runs his other businesses to great success. And, we can't say the same for some of the other owners in town, unfortunately.
So, are you aware that the Mets payroll is down as of this taping? The Mets payroll next year is about 70 million or so lower than it was last year.
I knew it was down. I didn't know that exact number, but there's still time left, before we enter the season.
So with Juan Soto on the team, do you have an expectation? Because if you're a Mets and Jets fan, your expectation is losing, I would assume, for the most part, and then you get disappointed and angry and upset. Do you go into this season with World Series aspirations?
It's an interesting question as a Mets, Jets, and Knicks fan. Like you asked me, you said I chose the Mets and Jets. No, I didn't. I was born. No one chooses the Mets and Jets. You get born into it. Okay, that's how that happens. I was born in Queens and raised in Queens. It's interesting with the Mets. Now that Steve and Alex own the team, I just am thrilled to have competent owners and competent management. Like that's enough for me right now. Obviously, like they overachieved last year, they underachieved the year before, but there's this baseline feeling that for the most part, good decisions are going to get made, money's going to be well spent. That's a tremendously good feeling. You don't have that about the Jets at all. And the Knicks are interesting. Mr. Dolan, he seemed to really, when he hired Leon Rose and Worldwide West, he seemed to really get the message that he should hire folks who know what they're doing and stay out of their way. And we're all very grateful for that as Knicks fans. And I've never seen that happen before. I've seen folks sell the team and then like look at the Washington Commanders. There's a bunch of examples of teams doing better once ownership has gotten rid of the team. I can't think of many examples where owners kind of rethink what they're doing to a much better outcome. Can you?
No, well, it's interesting because I don't look at ownership that way. So
No?
I look at ownership. I disagree with your premise. Stevie Cohn is very involved. All owners meddle, so I don't criticize him for that. But you heard him talk about the negotiations with Pete Alonso. Boris won't deal with David Stearns. He's dealing with Steve Cohn. And so all owners truly are meddling. And that's their right. It's their asset. I don't disagree with that. Just some are better at it than others, I would say.
But I would push back a little bit because it depends on how you define, meddling and getting involved. I mean, I think the basic premise is that Steve Cohn is smart enough to hire a guy like David Stearns and for the most part defer to his baseball opinion. Steve, of course, has ideas, but it's like he treats all his other business. If he buys, a huge dry cleaning conglomerate, he's not going to say, no, well, wait a minute. That's not how you press clothes. He knows you got to hire folks who know what they're doing and then be smart in the ways that you're smart to guide it. And there are certain owners who don't do that. Jerry Jones, it's like, you don't know, you're making these decisions. Why are you making these decisions?
I happen to respect Jerry Jones, though. He named himself GM. He's not a meddling owner. He actually named himself to do the job that he's doing. He may not be good at it, but I think he's the most honest of all the owners.
Yeah, so he's an honest, what's the word? An honest
Meddler.
Bumbling meddler. Okay, he's above board about it. But some guys are more under the radar. The point is, I think you can divide owners between they know how to help and they overestimate their own decision making when it comes to the sport.
Did he call you about Juan Soto while the negotiation was going on?
No.
Did you have any input at all?
If I happen to catch Steve at certain key moments, I'll ask him what he's thinking and I'll offer my 2 cents. I don't think he ever really listens to it. Part of what makes him a good owner is he doesn't listen to Hank Azaria,
What were your 2 cents on Juan Soto? Just give him whatever he wants.
Pretty much. I mean, look, it seems like Steve is not sweating the budget. So that's a good way to not sweat the budget is to it's overpay for Juan Soto. Okay.
When you're speaking to Steve or when you're at Mets games or speaking to fans, do you do it as Hank Azaria or do you do it as Brockmire?
Sometimes I'll break into a little Brockmire with him. Brockmire gets away with a lot more than Hank Azaria does.
So when you're giving player opinions,
yeah, I mean, it's very true. Like if I were going to say, Steve, what the hell are you doing with that? He's going to get a little annoyed if I walk in and say, Steve, what the heck is going on in your mind with this thing? It's fine, So, yeah, Brockmire comes out when you need to kind of give someone a hard truth. It's handy, as you've experienced on the Levitard show many a time.
Oh, there's no question. It gives you this license. That's the thing with voices, and I'm not able to imitate anybody, barely myself. It gives you free reign, in my opinion, to actually speak your truth about things because you can hide behind 1,400 different personas. Sort of what you did, your viral video that I draw people's attention to all of your social media. It's absolutely outstanding what you did in front of the guard at Buckingham Palace.
We'll see if the guard is a Simpsons fan at all. Well, sir, I do voices on The Simpsons.
I do motor bartender. Just wanted to thank you for your service here. Come on, sir, police chief Wiggum. So I know what it's like to, do my duty.
I'm also a snake, so if I were to rob anything, you certainly would deter me from that, sir.
I got there. Your video's gone viral when you get that wave of pushback to whatever you're doing in the comments eventually. But I always thought that was something you just did to guards, is see if you get a reaction, see if they'll look at you, make them laugh. And some people thought it was a little disrespectful, but I thought it was amusing.
I thought it was hysterical. And what's interesting is the way they're trained. So they're trained to ignore. They're trained to keep a straight face. But what's funny is I couldn't tell whether he was keeping a straight face because he thought you were crazy or he didn't know the voices. He didn't recognize who you were. And he just assumed you were another one of those people doing it, or whether he was dying of laughter inside and it was his training that was brought to bear, like from the Shakespearean theater, that he was able to keep a straight face.
Yeah, I don't know. Or maybe he just doesn't know from The Simpsons. That's possible. And he just thought I was some idiot yelling. He must have. I hope he would have at least thought, well, this guy can kind of change his voice pretty well. I would, but he certainly didn't. Nothing registered out of him. So
I was trying to think of the top 10 things that happened during the course of one day for a Buckingham Palace guard and where that would rank in terms of the people who are attempting to do something insane to try to get a reaction. And I always figured you'd be on the podium that particular day. And then I even went week, month, but I didn't get to year. I think over the course of a year, there's even crazier things.
Probably, yeah, I would imagine. But it's a tedious job, and I would imagine, broke up the day a little for him. What the heck, right?
It was something. I love the Brockmire. I love the show. I love the character. What I love about it is that I know Brockmire, and I don't mean because I know you. I'm saying in the industry, there are people who are, and I don't know if you drew that character from people you've met in our industry, but there are actually people just like that.
Oh,
and your ability it's so good. Is that how you developed Brockmire?
Yeah, this was, we talked about, the era of my voice changing. Bob Costas, he enjoys Brockmire. He appeared in a few Brockmires, and he calls this the generic baseball announcer voice of the 1970s, and that's directly accurate. These were a lot of guys that I heard growing up. And I remember, was it Rick Monday? Kind of sounded like a lot like this. So there's certain guys who really, really brought the vibrato, as they were calling games. And I always found it like a funny premise. Like, do these guys always sound like that? It's one thing to say, Johnson swings and misses at a breaking ball 0-1. It's another thing to go, during sex with your good lady wife, honey, I'll do the thing with your finger thing because I really enjoy that one. As Brockmire looks at, it's so, do they dirty talk like that? Do they express themselves this way during high emotion? If they're really wasted, do they still sound this way? Man, oh man, I have had one shot and one toot of cocaine too many.
You just opened the door, so I'm running right through it. Do you do voices at home with your wife? Like, are there moments when you're having an uncomfortable argument or a discussion, and you'll break into a voice to try to either make it funny or hide in sort of your shell of characters?
No, the answer is no. I don't do that. I wouldn't do that to my. That would be really awful and obnoxious. Like if we're really into it, I'm like, sweetie, what is all this all of a sudden? I just don't get it. No, that would be really annoying. I am in almost a constant state of doing. I just did a really stupid thing. I'm in a constant state at rest of doing one dumb voice after another just to make the day go by, much like for that guard at Buckingham Palace or wherever we were, Tower of London. I sort of like to trot them out, and she sometimes is more receptive to them than others. Let's put it
I would
that way.
assume that there have to be eye rolls
Oh,
that
yeah.
like it just has to happen.
Well, what's funny to me, David, is there are, but what's even funnier to me is we've gotten past the eye roll, because at least an eye roll is a reaction to it. I've done it so much to her for 21 years that now there's like zero real. Like it's as if I'm a ghost. Like nothing was even. I'll come in and it's like, yo, what the heck is happening in this part of town? And nothing, like as if no one said anything. It doesn't matter. No one spoke. That last
And
reaction.
do you
really
view
killed me.
that as though she's sick of all the voices? So do you try out, if you're looking for a new voice, you're working on a new character, do you test it out with her to say, ooh, what do you what about this one?
Yeah, all of the above. Like I'll try new things out. I'll bring out old things, and it's not because she's. I don't even think the way she puts it is if she responded to every stupidity thing that came her way, she'd just be in a constant state of responding. It's sort like when you're on you don't mean to ignore your sweetie, but when you're like in the middle of a text that's actually important, they say something, it doesn't register on you. That's kind of like how all my stupid background noise of voices, quite often it's like she's doing something, so she can't really doesn't have the bandwidth to deal with it.
Because on the other hand, I could look at it and say, after 21 years, you're still providing variety. So you could go at it in that way. Like, this is for you, sweetheart. This isn't for me and my ego. This is to make you feel like you're married to, 1,025 different guys.
It's very it's not, I'm not doing it for her benefit. It's just how I am. So, and she will say like, oh, that's a new one, if she hears it, or that guy never said that before or whatever. But it's mostly, she knows I'm just, for example, I often hit her with this. I don't know why this is a running character, and I don't know why it's this voice, but I'll say, hey, sweetie, what's your favorite war of antiquity? Mine's the Peloponnesian. This guy will always ask, what's yours, and then give you his example. And she never has responded in 21 years. She never answered. And I said, why do you never answer that guy? She said, because it's obvious that he's not really interested in what my favorite war is. He just wants to tell you his thing.
Does she have an interest in Bruce Springsteen?
Not really, no. She's more of a Neil Young, Crosby, Stills and Nash, David Bowie, Elton John kind of girl.
So was she upset when you started the Easy Street Band, thinking, if you're going to imitate somebody and go on tour and be away from me and raise money for this amazing foundation we started, can you at least do it with a musician that I like better?
No, what she minded was the near constant rehearsing I was doing, especially like at 6 a.m. She'd wake up and I'd be full voice trying to learn, the nuances of She's the One. And she's like, she had to instill a rule that no singing in the house before 7 a.m., stuff like that. Also, the first 2-3 months of trying to do it, I was not good. And it was in my house between my wife and son, it was all about, when are we going to tell dad that he should not do this because he's going to make an idiot of himself? And I was like, no, trust me. Some impressions just take longer to get than others. You have to
So
suffer
we're talking
through.
about the Easy Street Band, which you do and you're touring with, and I was lucky enough to go to a show. But how sure were you from the beginning that you were going to nail this?
Not entirely sure, but because it was the hardest I have ever worked to get a vocal impression, because I'm not a natural singer. So I had to literally learn to sing at the same time. I had to take singing seriously for the first time in my career. I've sung a lot in my career, but always in a comedic context, always in a very character deliver the song context. Comedic, character deliver the song, which you do need to carry a tune and you do need to have some musical ability, but it's not about, your chops as a singer. And so I kind of had the Bruce impression part down, the talk part, the gravel part, but the sing as Bruce is an entirely different deal.
So did you take singing lessons as Bruce though, or did you take him as Hank?
No, I did. I knew my process enough to know that I first needed to sing and lock in the impression, so I could sound. I needed to get it like 60% there in any given song on my own to sort of work my own instrument out. And then I brought in a vocal coach to say, now help me reach notes I can't, help me support what I'm doing, help me not destroy my voice because it's so gravelly. And the woman who's the backup singer in the band, Hannah Giuliano, she's a great vocal coach, and she's brought me a long way. And one of the things I love about this, David, is I'm like learning a new skill. I'm really enjoying it. It's like a hobby.
So tell the audience, first of all, it's the 4 through 9 Foundation, all money, and you buy tickets. I bought tickets. Thank you for the offer of the free ticket, but I wanted to support what you do.
Appreciate it.
It's incredible. And the show is amazing. You sing Bruce's songs as Bruce, which is, and you are Bruce. If you close your eyes, and I did this a few times during the concert, I must say that I wanted to sort of test where my head was, because I love Bruce Springsteen. I love going to his concerts. And other than the level of sound, because I've only seen Bruce in front of, 60,000 people, or at the Garden, 20,000 people, you really have it. And I don't think people will realize until they go see you, and which you tour, so you get a chance to. You are now Bruce Springsteen. Has Bruce heard you do this?
I've heard that he has. A buddy of mine is a dentist in New York, and he texted me a couple of months ago and said, send me your favorite video from the band. I sent him us doing Thunder Road in New York. And later that night, he texted me that he had Patty Scialfa in his dentist chair, and he played it for Patty, and she took it home to Bruce. And apparently Bruce gave us a seal of approval. I hope so. Maybe if I knew Patty was sitting there, I don't think I would have the nerve to text it. But but that's, I really am a mimic at heart. That's how I consider myself primarily, David, before actor or anything else. So, and I love Bruce Springsteen and his music, and I have since I was a teenager. So perfecting this singing impression, I'm obsessed with it. And I've gotten better since you saw. I really, really work at it.
Is this the hardest gig you've ever had to do?
It's the hardest vocal challenge I've ever had to do. And for example, a L'Homme Poli, getting a French accent was difficult for me. It took 3 months to really feel like I could speak naturally with a French. It was very hard for me to unlock it. I would say that was the second Polish accent I did in a thing called Uprising. Did the Polish accent, similar to French but different, and that was hard too. But this is by far. I'm still working. It's been a solid year in. I'm still tinkering with it. And
when you unlock it, does it stay unlocked forever? So back to Long Camp Polly, you can just pull that out. When's the last time you did that out loud, that character?
Oh, I get asked to do it. So I don't know, not that long ago. But yes, it does pretty much stay in there. But when you're singing, you have to remain practiced as a singer. You have to kind of build those vocal muscles up. And it's like working out in a gym almost. You need to keep practiced or you won't be able to do it. So that makes it more difficult too.
Are you going to get to the point where you're going to take sign requests? For people who don't know, because not everyone's a Springsteen fan who listens to the show, Bruce, during his heyday, he doesn't do it as much now. If you hold up a sign in the crowd, he'll look at it, and even if it's a song they haven't rehearsed or practiced, he will do the song with the band. It may take a minute or two, but they'll do it. You had a set list that you stuck to. Any thought of doing sign requests?
I mean, if someone yells out a song that we happen to know, sure. But the E Street Band's been at it for what, 50 years. So what I do want to do right now, we have about 21 songs. I'd love to have about 30 that we have in our repertoire. And are you an Elvis Costello fan?
I love Elvis Costello.
Did you see his Spinning Songbook tour?
I saw it when I was in college. I went to Brown during spring break and he did the wheel. I've seen the wheel several times, and he was there for 4+ because the rule was he had to do every song on the wheel. And if a song came up twice, he would do it differently.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was the most unbelievable concert. It was Brown Spring Fling in 1987. Or 86, 87. And it was the number one moment of my life.
See, back in that, I was at Tufts back in I graduated in 85, but that era.
I went to Tufts in 86.
Did you really?
I was a freshman at Tufts. My parents bribed me to go to Tufts. They bought me a car. They said,
if
you go to Tufts, I'll buy you a car.
Well, you went to Brown just to see. Oh, wow.
I went to Brown just to see Elvis. I was at Tufts, and my parents said, I wanted to go to Wisconsin. And my parents said that if you go to Tufts, we'll buy you a car. And I said, really? So I went to Tufts and then I transferred and they said, well, get the car. We're taking your car. And I said, no. You didn't say I had to graduate. You said I just had to go to Tufts.
Wow. You were negotiating even then, David. Why were they so adamant about Tufts?
Because they didn't want me to go to the Midwest. I grew up in the city.
Yeah, but why was Brown bad?
It's funny you say that. They had a thing for Tufts. I loved Tufts. I lived in Bush Hall. I'm still friends with people I met freshman year.
But I lived at Carmichael my freshman year.
There you go.
By the way, one of the things the 4 through 9 Foundation has done the last few years, we focus on education, social justice, and recovery issues. The foundation created a substance-free dorm, which used to be Carpenter House, where I lived sophomore year, behind Carmichael there. And that's now, if you want to live substance-free on campus, there's a designated space for it now.
Did you build it, or you're supporting it?
No, they remodeled Carpenter House and made it so that it was friendly for folks to because what we realize is it's not an easy thing to try to go through your college years sober or substance free, and your social life takes a real hit. And what we were trying to solve that, and what came through really clearly was if you create a designated space, the same way you kind of love your dorm mates and people you live with, especially freshman year, that becomes the social life. The space itself becomes your peer group. And so that's what we were able to create to make, sober life, substance-free life easier on campus.
Hank, I could keep going, but you gave me, and you were generous with 30 minutes, and I'm not going to take more of your time as much as I want to do a full show with you. But I want to send people to easystreetnyc.com. You can get information. You can get upcoming show information. You got to go see Hank Azaria as Bruce Springsteen. And he has an entire band called the Easy Street Band. It's for charity. It is a project that is so meaningful to me, and it's way more meaningful to you. And I want people to just live in that world of you doing that. So, Hank, keep going.
We'll be in Alexandria and Baltimore on March 6th and 7th. We'll be in Patchogue, Long Island on the 28th. We got like 15 shows all next year, so check us out.
You're literally on tour.
I'm on tour, yeah.
Okay, one more thing. I'm sorry, one more minute.
Go ahead. We got a few minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have a rider? Like, what kind of lead singer are you? Do you need special water? Do you need special things in a green room? Or are you just happy to be there?
The kids in the band, and they have very modest, like one likes Kind bars and the other likes Pellegrino. But no, yes, we have a rider for stuff we want. I usually I have to make sure there's caffeine of some kind in back there so that I can do the show. Because I'm old, and if you go on at 9, you need a little pick me up. But other than that, no. It's about the joy of performing.
Well, please go find Hank Azaria, the Easy Street Band. Again, that's easystreetnyc.com, and all the money that you will pay for tickets, which are very reasonably priced, and you're getting more than your money's worth. It goes to charity. Hank Azaria, it's fun to see you. We will talk this season because I want to watch you and your Mets journey this year with Juan Soto.